You are live with Get Connected. Mike Agerbo here with fellow tech nerds John Biehler and AJ Vickery. We have a great show today. Later on in the program, we'll be talking with our good friend Duane Storey. He's our tech digital nomad who lives now in Valencia, Spain. He's working on a really cool project, as I think a lot of us are doing now to use up some of the time during the pandemic here. He is making a tube amp. AJ, do you remember tubes? Are you old enough?
Yes, I remember tubes.
TVs used to have tubes in them. Amplifiers for your stereo used to have vacuum tubes in them as well, basically to amplify the sound. So he is going old school and making one himself. So we'll be chatting with him and what he's had to do to make that all happen. I mean, if you had to go and buy one now, like a tube amplifier, those things can be like $10,000.
Well, but mention to him when you're talking to him that there's a big TV just out on the curb saying please take for free, just around the corner from my place. It's one of the old style ones with the tubes. Yes. So
that is super old. Okay, let's talk about some of the tech news this week. A lot of us are obviously using video conferencing to keep in touch with work and also family and friends. One of the biggest ones right now in the world is Zoom, and everyone's, I guess, struggling to keep up with them. I think one of the big features for me, and even AJ, we're using Zoom this week to capture the video for our video podcast, the virtual background. So it looks like Skype is trying to get in on that action now as well.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. I mean, it's such a great way to sort of turn what might usually be in kind of like an ugly backdrop, or maybe you don't want people to see your bed when you're, talking to them in a business meeting. So it just sort of cuts all that out, and just sort of using the software in the computer just puts your body in the frame in any backdrop or any setting you want to be in.
It almost seems that everyone except Zoom got caught during this pandemic with their pants down, when it comes to video conferencing. Like, they're all struggling to keep up with Zoom.
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't think anyone could have really predicted that it would have been such a major shift to needing to continue to do business, but needing to do it virtually. I mean, it makes perfect sense in hindsight. I
think so. Facebook obviously wants to get in the action as well. They're probably upset that they don't completely own this space. They have something called Messenger Rooms, and they are going after Zoom and the House Party app as well, kind of blending the best of both worlds. Do you trust Facebook to use this?
Well, I guess it comes down to one of those things on just which application you use and you're most comfortable with. And I think that's where people are going to get, that's where they're going to see a quick upside, some of these companies, to putting these things out, because there's a lot of people that don't want to install Zoom because it's just another computer program. They got to download it. Maybe they heard about some Zoom bombing or some security problems. They use Facebook every day. So then all of a sudden it's like more comfortable for them to use these other platforms. The only thing I would comment on is that, sometimes when these programs come out that are very specific to the task they need to do, they're quite excellent. And I would put Zoom in that category. It's excellent in terms of the application and what you can do with it. And sometimes when I use these other applications, I find that they're pale by comparison. They just don't quite have the same integration used across multiple platforms. They tend to be sometimes more buggy. Haven't used the Facebook one myself, but
yeah, I'm interested. This new one from Facebook will allow up to 50 people to join a call, and you don't have to necessarily download any software, and it'll start off
with that.
So they'll start off with Facebook, and because they own some of the other biggest social media platforms like Instagram and WhatsApp, it'll be bringing the Messenger Rooms to those platforms as well in the future. So I think out of all the competitors to Zoom out there, they actually have a shot. When you look at the install base or the user base for Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, that's pretty well the whole world. Billions.
Go ahead.
The thing about that, though, that's a little concerning is the fact that with Zoom, I can create an anonymous link that I can send to a stranger saying, hey, let's have a meeting or a chat about something. I don't have to be friends on Facebook with you to have that chat. So it's unclear to me how messenger rooms will handle, those outsiders or people that you don't necessarily want to expose your personal Facebook account to. So presuming messenger rooms is meant for more of the social stuff as opposed to the business side of things. But that's one of the things that Zoom, I think, did really well is like, here, just use this link, download the app or just use the browser. You don't need to sign up for anything. I've already done all that work for you.
Yeah, and so I really don't think anything past 8 or 10 should be in a virtual conference together. Personally, we're doing our child's school meetings now, and imagine 5-year-olds. You don't want more than 3 of them on the call.
Well, this particular one, Facebook Messenger rooms say that you don't have to have a Facebook account, or guests don't. But obviously, the person that starts it would probably have to have a Facebook account, which to your point, then everyone knows who you are, right?
Right, because not everyone's using their real name and their Facebook account either, right? Because there's a certain level of anonymity that they want to have in that. Or at least how you get into that account. So
another one that people are using now is Microsoft Teams. And I think most people probably hadn't even heard of Microsoft Teams, but they have grown to 70%, up to 75 million daily active users. And again, to compare that to Zoom, I think has 300 million right now. So they're still in the lead. I haven't used Microsoft Teams myself. AJ, you have. What's your experience been like?
Well, I have used Teams now in a couple different places. There's a few companies that I've been having some Teams calls with, as well as I mentioned before, we're part of the Vancouver School Board, and they're using Teams for to set up all the classrooms for the kids to learn from home. There's some cool features to it in terms of being able to create assignments and being able to, for the school platform, do your assignments and then upload them, turn them in, and then get sort of notification back that you've done that assignment and turned it in. With Microsoft being sort of like a business-based application, obviously Microsoft Office, Teams kind of has that same sort of, corporate feel to it, as well as the corporate tools that are built into it that I think do work quite well. I think that, from that pure conferencing standpoint, and a lot of these additional sort of features that are more I say consumer friendly or personal, what we might use in our personal time, I think that it fails in comparison for me personally in terms of use. And then, again, multiple platforms. It does work on the mobile, it does work on the PC, it does work on the Mac, on the tablet and whatnot. But overall, I would say that my experience with Zoom is better when it comes to this video conferencing and sort of social interaction part.
So you're not going to be the face of Microsoft Teams anytime soon.
I don't think so. I mean, the one thing about that uptake, though, that's worth mentioning is that the accessibility to Teams, right? That's what you have to think about. First of all, if you subscribe to Office, which you almost have to now, Teams is kind of part of that already toolbox that's in the Microsoft 365 platform. So right away, it's oh, I already have it installed, or maybe not installed, but it's already free as part of my subscription. So it's already included. So for people to look at that versus, do I get a paid account or a free account on Zoom? If I take the Zoom account, it's limited in terms of how many minutes I can use. Teams becomes a quick uptake, which is why I think, that growth number is so possible for Microsoft. Can they sustain it though? Will it hold out in competition to something like Zoom? That's what's to be seen.
Well, I was kind of interested in it because, in our company, AJ, we use Microsoft Office. So I'm kind of assuming that it's part of our package somewhere in there.
Yes. Yeah, it's a part of our subscription.
Yeah, but we're also right now paying for a business messaging platform called Slack, which hugely popular in business. It's kind of like instant messenger meets email. And I was wondering, could we replace Slack, because we're paying for that as well with Microsoft Teams, which we're paying for.
Yeah, I mean, Slack for a license, we think we have something like 16 or 18 users. We pay close to $1,500 a year for that platform because we're on the pro version of Slack. That cost would be reduced to zero if we use Teams, and that's a very attractive thing for any business.
And compared to Slack, how is it?
Well, Slack is just, again, one of those purpose-built applications. It's fast. It works on all the different platforms really, really well. I would say that my experience using Slack over Teams, Slack is, in my experience, much better application.
so it loses again. Well, they've got something to strive for. Okay. We're going to have to take a break here in a moment. I want to encourage everyone, if you haven't checked it out, again, visit our website, getconnectedmedia.com. We've got a great newsletter there. We've got the contest that runs through the newsletter as well. If you subscribe, you're entered to win the weekly contest. And also, we have a great YouTube channel. We are pumping out all kinds of great videos, everything from tech reviews to how-to videos, everything you can imagine. And we'd love if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel and also like and comment on our videos. That helps us build up even a bigger video library. When we come back from the break, we're going to open up the Get Connected mailbag. We've been getting a lot of questions during the pandemic because obviously more people have time on their hands in front of their computers. So we're going to answer some of the questions from you. Everything from photo sticks to webcams and how secure they are, and blocking your number. Listen to Get Connected here on the Corus Radio Network. Back after this. You are back with Get Connected. Mike Agerbo here with John and AJ. Don't tune out yet. We're going to get to our mailbag here in a second. And later on, we'll be talking with our good friend Duane Storey from Valencia, Spain, checking in on him and his project that he's doing during the pandemic here. It's all about creating his own tube amplifier. For the oldies out there, they know how great the sound was when they would listen to their records that were hooked up to their tube amplifier. Well, he's putting one together again, so we're going to understand how he's making that all happen. It's pretty cool. Let's jump to the mailbag, guys. We've been getting a lot of questions coming into Get Connected through the website. One of the ones we keep getting questions on, we covered it in the radio show a few weeks ago, John, is the photo stick. How do you create your own photo stick? Or, if you buy one of these, you see advertised on the internet, are they any good and are they worth the money? And explain what a photo stick is again, John.
You basically, you get this USB thumb drive, you plug it into your computer, and it runs some software that will then gather and copy all of your photos. And the short answer is, I don't recommend them. I think there's better ways to spend that same kind of money because it can be pretty expensive to buy them, and they're pretty small capacity.
They're like $100 plus something.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And again, we've already covered this, but the quick, simple answer is just buy an external hard drive. And there's some tools. We've got links on our website. Just look for photo sticks on our homepage right now, and you'll have the full rundown, what we recommend, and we'll even embed the video podcast from a previous episode where we talk about it at length.
Right up on our website, getconnectedmedia.com. Webcams. Obviously, we all have to use webcams right now. And John, we got an email in from Peter.
Yeah. So Peter is looking to get a webcam, and like everybody else on the internet, he can't get a Logitech. That's his favorite, and that's what I use if I'm not using my built-in MacBook camera. And so they're sold out everywhere. And so he's wondering about these generic HD webcams on Amazon, and he's concerned about how secure these might be to use. He's also wondering if we know of any retailers that have Logitech cameras in stock, and no. They're like toilet paper. You can't get them. But the thing is, I do know that Amazon has been stocking them, and Graham Williams, our host on the App Show, he actually just bought a Logitech webcam directly from Logitech.com. So maybe go to the source, not the actual source, the store, but the source of Logitech, Logitech.com, and order directly from them if you're having trouble finding one locally. But as for these generic HD webcams on Amazon, they should be fine. They're literally just cameras with USB cables on them. I don't know exactly what he's worried about from a security standpoint. But
I think he's worried that people could hack into them. Didn't you remember the Wyze cameras that you loved? Didn't they have a security flaw where people could access the camera?
But that's a little different, though. That's a externally facing camera in the sense that it's exposed to the internet, so you can access it remotely from an app,
like a security cam type thing.
Yeah. And if I understand Peter's question properly, I think he's looking to get a USB webcam that would not be connected to the internet per se, but it's physically connected to his computer, and then he would use that for Zoom or whatever. And
I suppose it's possible if some manufacturer wanted to be underhanded, they could put software into the camera physically itself, and when you plug it into computer, it could want to run something that gave
Yeah.
outside access if they were literally being malicious.
Yeah, because the thing is, most Windows and Mac computers these days, they don't need a driver. They just recognize it as a camera.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
you just plug it in and go, and FaceTime, Facebook, or Zoom will just recognize it as a camera option. It might have some weird name that you have to choose depending on what this USB signature is on that particular camera. It won't come up as Logitech, obviously, but whatever it is would pop up, and you choose that from a drop-down list of what your available cameras are. I think they're probably fine, and if you can get one, great. But I think even those cameras might be hard to find because I think everyone's just been scrambling to get something better.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. I mean, he's asking about these generic cameras, out of China. I mean, the name brand models have just as big a amount of capability to be hacked as these generic ones. That's a tough call. And
a lot of them are all made in the same factory, anyways. They're just different white label branding, anyways.
If you listen to our sister show, the App Show, tomorrow, we will also be covering how you can use certain DSLRs as your web camera, which would make them like the ultimate web camera, as far as technology. So again, listen to the App Show tomorrow morning from 10 to 11. And if you've got a DSLR, you might be on the list, and we'll tell you how that all works as well. John, we have one more question from Natalie.
Yeah, she's wondering about using her phone to call people. Now she's working from home, like a lot of us are, and she's got to make calls when normally she'd be using her office phone. And I guess she's got a blocked number, and she doesn't want her name and number exposed to the people that she's calling. I don't know what kind of business she's doing, but as far as I know, there's no way to have it so that your name shows up and not your number if you're a blocked call. It's just a blocked call. The problem that she's having is that people aren't answering her call because it's coming up as a blocked call, and people don't want to answer a phone if they don't know who's calling, and it's not her business name or something else on there. So you can talk to your phone provider. I don't know if she's using a landline or a cell phone, but as far as I know, there's no way to unblock partially your phone number or your name and have that show up. You would have to talk to your provider about that, but I'm pretty sure there's no way to do that.
Okay, when we come back from the break, we will be learning how to make your own tube amplifier from our friend Duane Storey over in Valencia, Spain. This is a really interesting segment and what he's had to do to make that all happen. And if you don't know what a tube amplifier is, stay tuned anyway. It's a fascinating look into the past of technology. Back after this. You are back with Get Connected. Mike Agerbo here with John Biehler, still broadcasting from our home studios. Wanted to go all the way over to Valencia, Spain, to one of our tech friends. His name's Duane Storey. He has been on the program before, basically telling us about his life over in Europe and how he is being a digital nomad. Well, he's actually got an interesting project on the go right now. I've been following him on Facebook, and he is putting together a tube amplifier and actually designing his own board to do it as well. So I thought we'd bring him on the show to learn a little bit more about that. For those folks that aren't familiar with tube amplifiers, we'll get into a little bit about what that is. But Duane, thanks for joining us. And I just got to ask, this project, is this your descent into madness?
It certainly could be. I actually started this probably about 7 or 8 years ago, and I did a blog entry about it, and it's sort of been at the back of my mind ever since. So at some level, the quarantine we're experiencing here in Spain has been good for that, because I've had lots of time to sort of push it forward finally. So.
Yeah, it sounds like they're just kind of easing up on some of the restrictions in Spain. I think you get an hour outside each day for exercise now.
Right. Yeah. So it's been 46 days where we've basically only been allowed to go get groceries or to the pharmacy. So starting in a few days, where actually everybody's allowed to have 1 hour of exercise a day, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's, at this point it's heavenly just to be able to get outside. So
sounds like prison life.
It does, actually. I was thinking about that. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your tube amplifier project. And for the kids out there, explain what a tube amplifier is.
So if you have an amplifier at home for listening to music, it's sort of the opposite of a tube amplifier. and it's something called a solid state amplifier. And that basically just means it's using transistors and MOSFETs and things like that to amplify the sound. But in the old days, before there was transistors, and sort of in the era of the Beatles and the radio shows, what did the amplification wasn't a transistor, it was a vacuum tube. And it has a different kind of quality to it. Some people would argue more musical quality. And so it just seemed like something I wanted to build to for my record player primarily, but just something that's, you know, it's not just something that sounds great, it's something that looks good too, because usually the tubes are glowing when you're listening to music, and it just seemed like a really interesting project that would sort of tax my digital skills and also the analog side too, the amplification, because that's all new to me too. So.
Well, it's interesting. I remember when I was young, I think our TV actually had tubes in it as well. And every so often, you know, they would blow, and you'd have to go down to, I remember going to London Drugs, they had a tube tester. You could bring your tubes in to put on this machine to see if they were still good. And if they weren't, you'd have to buy a new tube. And so this is kind of fascinating. I know a lot of the older listeners kind of understand that technology, but what made you want to do this besides having nothing else to do?
Well, you know, it's actually funny. When I was back in university, there was this guy named Chad, and he had built one of these. And it was something that always struck me as being a really interesting project. And my background's in electrical engineering, actually, and his was too. And just to see him actually apply some of his university skills to make something, you know, tangible inside. I mean, I spend a lot of my day writing software, and it's great, but it's really intangible. It's sort of, you know, the wizard behind the curtains. And this is something that would actually be on my table, and it would actually be glowing and making sound. And so it just seemed like it was something really fun to do. So.
And these things are normally fairly expensive to buy pre-made, which you can do, of course, especially nowadays, because they're, you know, the tubes are harder to source. There's probably only a few companies actually making them anymore, as opposed to back in the old days.
Yeah. So, I mean, in general, if you're into music in a big way and you like hi-fi systems, you would probably have a tube amplifier at home. And, you know, they sort of start at the $10,000 mark. Just to get it. I mean, of course, you can get the $300 or $400 stuff on Amazon that's just cheaply put together, but the really good stuff starts at around 10,000. So, yeah, they are expensive to build, like you said, because some of the parts are hard to source, and it's just a different way of making sound. I mean, you basically have this tube that's literally electrons are flying between plates, and that's what's making the sound. So it's a totally different way to make music, and it's a throwback to a different era. Same as vinyl. I mean, vinyl's resurgence sort of falls into that too, where people have sort of moved away from the CD and digital aspect into vinyl. And I think the tube amplifier for me is sort of a throwback to that different romanticized life, I guess.
So it's a bit of nostalgia, but also just a different sort of overall tone and warmth to the sound that you don't get from the, like you said, the solid state systems that most people would typically have.
Yeah, so I don't want to bog people down with theory, but there's something called distortion, and solid state amplifiers, they make something called odd order distortion. And odd order distortion is not musical. It's very grating. It's where you're listening to music and you get tired after a while. Whereas tube amplifiers, they throw out something called even order distortion, which is, it's musical. It's harmonically related to the sound. So it'd be like a chorus pedal in guitar, or, you know, someone singing in the same note, but in a different octave, for example. So even though it's technically on paper has more distortion, it sounds better because it's musically related to the original sound. So.
How would you even begin to go about trying to put something like this together? Are there plans on the internet that you can download and use?
So there are tons of plans. Part of the challenge for me and why it's taken me 7 years is because I really wanted to do it all myself. So I have certainly referenced a lot of designs from the 60s and, trying to take some of the best of both of them, or best of all of them. But for me, it's really designing it from scratch and taking my beats with that, because I'm sure the first time I put something on, it's not going to work the way I think. And but nowadays it's so easy. You can download all these programs for simulating circuits, like LT Spice on the Mac. That's what I'm using to actually simulate the analog side. KeyCAD, which is sort of, we'll get into the PCB stuff, but that's what I've been using to sort of put together my PCB boards, and all this is free for the most part. So it's been really easy to replicate. I mean, back when I was in university, it was so hard to be able to do stuff like this. I mean, you'd be paying $1,000 for something that's now free. So it's certainly more, it's easier for people to get into if they want to.
I think that's a key point too, is back when you were in university, you couldn't get a circuit board made. You'd have to either make it yourself, or you'd have to be a big manufacturing company to get it done. But now you're able to use these free tools to design them and sort of prove them, even if you start with a breadboard, but then you can send that design file off to somewhere in China or maybe even locally and have those circuit boards manufactured for almost nothing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's a company I've been using in China, JLPCB or JLC PCB, and they offer 5 boards for $2 plus shipping. And so, I did a small breadboard previously, like a little prototype, and it took me a few hours of soldering. And it's like, well, if I can just spend $2, I'd much rather spend the time in the computer perfecting the design, send it out, and then 10 days later have it arrive. And it's basically, it has the PCB traces, so it saves me all the soldering. So it's just a better use for my time, I think, because I know how to solder. You know how to solder. I mean, I've done it so many times. That's not the fun part for me. The fun part is the iteration and the designing.
Well, and that's the cool thing is that you can iterate, for $2 a pop, and actually have something that actually looks professional as opposed to, this crazy hodgepodge that looks like a bomb kind of wiring system.
No, it's true. And I mean, the only downside to that is, it's probably a 10, 12 business day turnaround. So I have 4 designs en route back to me because I couldn't wait. I didn't have the patience. So I kept submitting another one with more features. So when they all 4 arrive, I can sort of test them all and see, which were the pieces that worked.
So you're talking about designing your own boards. Can you buy these things pre-made?
I think you could. On some of these, there's like DIYaudio.com, I think, and there's a whole tube forum there, and they have their own store. But I never thought about monetizing this, but certainly because my previous business was selling open source software, I was thinking that it would be possible. I mean, at the end of this, I have to order 5 boards at once. I only need 1. So at the very end, I'm going to have a really great design for, the heart of my amplifier, but I'm going to have 4 extra and a design I can easily print out for, 10 euros. So I may think of selling these, or at least, open sourcing some of the design to help other people. So.
How is it finding the parts overall for this project so far? You talked about designing your own board, which is kind of the heart of keeping this thing all together. What about all the tubes and other components?
So the tubes aren't too bad. There's still quite a few companies that make them. I mean, Russia's a country, there's a bunch of companies in Russia that make tubes. Whether they're good, people debate that. But I'm using a company in Europe that makes good tubes. They're known for it. So that's not too bad. But I mean, all the little components from China, they're easy to source, but they take a long time to arrive. So I mean, I literally have 42 packages on the way from China right now of various, different integrated circuits and, capacitors. And because tube amps are high voltage, you can't just use a normal capacitor. A lot of it, you have to have something, like a 500 volts, capacitor. So some of the components are a little specialized, but there's only one component that was really tricky for me to source, and that was I wanted digital volume control, even though like the amplifier itself is analog. I wanted to be able to eventually put a remote on this. And if you're going to have a remote, then basically the volume has to be controlled digitally. So that was the only hard part to find, because you have a left and right channel that has to be controlled at the same time. And we hear sound logarithmically. We don't hear it linearly. And it was hard to find volume control that understood that it would be for audio and that you have to sort of scale. You have to scale non-linearly. So, but I eventually did find one in the UK of all places. So,
how much are you into this for now, Duane?
Oh, I really don't know. I mean, the amplifier itself, when it's done, will be about 1,500 Canadian worth of parts. But I've probably spent another 1,000 Canadian on top of that, in components, just because you can't just buy one capacitor, right? You have to, from China, you have to buy 100.
Yeah.
So I have the good news is I'll have a lot of extra components at the end. And I did order some new transformers actually. So my plan is to make a second one when this is done, a little bit different design, but I will definitely have 2 at the end, and I might sell the second one. But
is this a new business for you, Duane's tubeamplifier.com?
I don't know. Actually, it's interesting. I do really enjoy it, and I am taking it seriously. Like I'm trying to make something that looks good and professional, and I'm taking my time. Like, it's going to have an LCD on it, and it's going to have a bezel, and it's something I think if you saw it in a showroom, it would not look out of place. That's my goal. And I'm normally an impatient person for stuff like this, but because, like I said, 7 years, I don't mind waiting 2 or 3 weeks as new parts arrive, and I just tackle it piece by piece. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to do one-offs for amplifiers. That would be a lot of fun.
We've been talking with Duane Storey. He is a digital nomad, a web and software developer, Canadian, but living over in Valencia, Spain right now, and working on this new tube amplifier project. Duane, I want to thank you for your time, and I hope when you plug it into the wall, it works when it's fine.
I do. Yeah, I do too. Actually, the other day I tried soldering something and the whole power went out in the house. So
take down the power for your block. That's great. Duane, thanks again for joining us.
No problem. Thanks.
When we come back from the break, more tech to talk here on Get Connected. Stay tuned. You're back with Get Connected. Mike, AJ, and John here. It's time for Tech of the Week. And this week, we're going to cover a couple smartphones. The new one, what is it? The OnePlus 8 Pro. That's a mouthful. The latest Android phone and the iPhone SE. I've had a chance to have my hands on that for a few days. John, we'll start, AJ, you've had a chance to check out the OnePlus 8 Pro, a very popular brand out of China.
Yes, and if you are watching the podcast, I am physically holding the device here as well, which will give you a chance to sort of just see some of the things I'm saying about the quality and the overall design. First off, I'd like to say that OnePlus has traditionally been known for trying to come out with what they kind of called the sort of like the premium phone killer. What they wanted to do was come out with a phone that had all the premium specs, but was maybe, missing one or two things, which took it out of that premium category. But then they also always just price attacked the premium phones. And so for the longest time that I've been reviewing the OnePlus phones and using them as my usual everyday type of phone, I've always just had a little bit of those less features that the full premium phones do have. For example, wireless charging has been something that has never yeah, exactly. But anyway, this is the first time OnePlus has actually just thrown that aside, and they've come out with what they're actually, which actually now is a premium phone. It's got every single feature that any of the premiums do have, and it has a price point that kind of goes with that. But let's talk a little bit about it. First of all, you can see on the back here, for those watching this show, it's got an impressive camera bump on it. It actually has it's got a quad camera system built into it, including a 48 megapixel full sensor camera. So the camera that's built into this and the technology is just outstanding. They're actually touting it to be one of the best cameras out there on the marketplace today. One of the 4 cameras, there's a telephoto lens, which is a ×30. There's a macro lens camera as well for close-up shots. And then there's also a color filter lens, which I found interesting. I'm not exactly too sure how often you would use that, but essentially you can just put all these really cool filters on that are being done with the camera, not with software. The front of the screen, again, premium. It's got the full AMOLED technology built into it. It runs at 4K at 120 hertz, so it's just got incredible picture quality to it, and it's actually got stereo speakers built into it as well. So you can sort of take that experience watching whether your own videos or just even watching videos off of Netflix or whatever makes them incredible. Price point. It is a 5G as well, which we're going to see in all premium phones these days, 1,400 Canadian.
Well, if you don't have that kind of money to spend, and it is a beautiful phone, no question. I've read the reviews on that. Check out my review of the iPhone SE. It's up on our website, getconnectedmedia.com. I've also done a great video about it. Sound like Trump. It's a great video about the iPhone SE. What I love about it is it's got a lot of the premium features as far as power, got a great camera on it, and the price, $599, literally half the price of your phone, AJ. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's okay.
Check
half
it out.
The features, half the price. That's the way it should be.
Oh, okay. GetConnectedMedia.com. Check out my review of the iPhone SE if you're in the market for a new iPhone. That's all the time we have left. I want to thank all the folks that helped put the show together. Don't forget to hit our YouTube page as well and subscribe, like, and comment on our videos so we can make even more. See you again next time.